I kind of want to set Tailwind. I am worried about the double super effective priority Draining Kiss coming out into Roaring Moon, so I could terrestrialize Roaring Moon. Using my Terra early has not tended to pay off with this team. That said, I have Fairy Terra on the 2 Pokemon in the back, and my opponent's team seems to be largely built around 2 strong poison types, and I don't really see the Terra Water on Landorus doing a whole lot here either. In fact, keeping the ground and flying typing is probably more valuable, resisting Okidogi stabs and Landorus is poison. So I actually think that Terra Flying is pretty reasonable on Roaring Moon here. And all that, and they just protect Comfey. Okay. This is the team that Justin Tang used this past weekend to win the San Antonio Regional Championship. And it does look like an extremely strong team. Ice Rider Calyrex, I've been convinced for a long while now, is one of the very best restricted Pokemon in the format, if not the best one. You have other powerful threats around it, like Hearthflame Mask, Ogerpon, and Rapid Strike Urshifu, as well as special offense from Life Orb Incarnate Landorus, putting out a lot of different offensive coverage and making it very hard for opponents to position into this team. You have Trick Room on the Calyrex and Tailwind on this Booster Energy Terra Flying Roaring Moon. That Pokemon once again doing extremely well. So you have flexible speed control options. And then of course Amoonguss providing a lot of support and playing well in Trick Room, but also just opening holes for any of these strong attackers. And of course this being Regulation G, single restricted format, not necessarily matchup roulette, but a lot of teams do play primarily through their restricted Pokemon, and some restricted Pokemon, well, every restricted Pokemon has some good matchups and some bad ones, so you use the other pieces to cover for the matchups that give you some trouble. So we can see some techs here for Miraidon teams, like the Landorus. And I don't necessarily know what every Pokemon does here. They obviously need some anti-Zamazenta attacks. I'm sure the Ogerpon is very helpful to that end, and to lesser extents, the Amoonguss and Urshifu. But yeah, generally just trying to round things out so that Ice Rider Ice Rider Calyrex can go to work where it does, and then you have coverage for everything else. All of that said, once again, for the second consecutive week, just like in last week's video on the Birmingham Regional Championship, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not that interested in the team that won the regional, compared to, instead, what's much more interesting to me, the team that got second place, which is this one right here, used by Xiliang Tang. You can see that it's completely different from the last team we were looking at. Roaring Moon's attacks are in different move slots. Calyrex's support moves are swapped around. Landorus's move order is all over the place. So a lot of differences here, but very similar concept with the offensive partners helping to open holes for the Ice Rider Calyrex. I'm definitely not sure what some of the Terra types on this team are for. Fairy Amoonguss, I mean, makes sense for a solid neutral defensive profile, but in my experience so far, that's not really the move in Reg G, and you're better off playing into resistances. But then they also have Fairy on the Ice Rider Calyrex instead of, say, Grass for powder immunity or Fire for burn immunity, so I might just have to play some games with this team to find out what some of these Terra types are for. The Terra Water on Landorus is interesting as well. I guess this team needs strong answers to Kyogre after that did very well in Birmingham. And then, of course, Miraidon won Birmingham, so Amoonguss is good into Kyogre. The Terra Water Landorus with Sandsear Storm is probably a tough surprise for Kyogre teams as well. But yeah, that's enough talk. I think the only thing I can do here to really figure this out is to get on this ladder with this second place team from the San Antonio Regional. Apologies to the winner of that event. And get some games. And I even have Xiliang Tang's EVs because even though I'm recording this very soon after the regional, he's already posted the full paste publicly. So thanks to him for that. Much appreciated. Here we have another Ice Rider team. This is interesting. This looks like... Oh, never mind. This just looks like the Ice Rider Iron Valiant stuff that's been around since Worlds, at least. I'm familiar with this. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I know how to play into it with this team. I mean, Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon looks very strong here. Being hard for... being strong into Calyrex and hard for Iron Valiant to remove, although some of the other pieces a bit trickier for me. I also like Landorus in this matchup a decent amount. I think we bring Calyrex for sure. I think we do a Tailwind game plan here. Something like Calyrex, Roaring Moon, Ogre Pawn, Landorus. And we'll see how that goes. So they lead their Ice Rider Calyrex with Roaring Wrestler here, Incineroar. So Roaring Moon is a little bit nerfed now. Also, I have to be alert to a possible Trick Room. There also is a possible Will-O-Wisp coming from the Incineroar. I don't really know that it's worthwhile to leave both my Pokemon on the field here. That said, switching Landorus in on a Glacial Lance is not ideal. I'm going to try switching Ogre Pawn in. Yeah, if they try to burn that slot, of course it will fail into the Fire-type Ogre Pawn. And I'll just Protect. It'd be nice to just aggressively go for the Tailwind, but again, I don't want Roaring Moon to take a Glacial Lance before I manage to execute that. And sure enough, there's a Glacial Lance that does more than I'd like to Ogre Pawn. But I do get a chance now to land an Ivy Cudgel into something. They don't have a Fire Resist to bring in. It might even be worth Terastallizing here. Maybe? They could Protect Parting Shot into Ogre Pawn. I'm just going to do it. It's maybe a little bit reckless, but it feels like a fun and cool play. Yeah, they do Protect. Are they going to Parting Shot Ogre Pawn here? They just go right for a Flare Blitz, so actually it's good that I Terastallized there. Okay. Well, I still can Ivy Cudgel this slot. And I think I'm putting out enough pressure that I can pretty safely switch Landorus in here. I do lose the speed boost on Roaring Moon, but I also lose the attack drop. And with that, I don't think Roaring Moon was doing a lot in this position. Although maybe it could complement Ogre Pawn doubling into that slot with an attack. That's Terra Water Calyrex, so that Ivy Cudgel is not doing what I hoped. Are they going to get rid of Ogre Pawn here? No, they set Trick Room. I would love to Horn Leech the Calyrex, but I can't really do that safely at this point. And I've already used my Terra, so I can't Terra Water Landorus. So, yeah, I've played this a little bit recklessly, but, you know, it was fun. They also have offensive coverage into my Calyrex, so I can't so safely switch that in. And probably just lose this one, but I'll try not to. Kill a turn of Trick Room. Ogre Pawn survives the Glacial Lance, but not the Ivy Cudgel. So we do at least deny their Calyrex a boost, but we don't deny... Okay, yeah. And yeah, I just played Ogre Pawn too recklessly early on, and they were able to position around it pretty smoothly. I don't think I need to play this one out. Well, actually, no. If Calyrex hadn't taken that Ivy Cudgel or had survived it better, but is what it is. So yeah, this team has outs in a lot of situations, but I just set myself up for failure the way I played that early game. We'll forfeit here and get another one. Okay, another Ice Rider team. This one looks more Trick Room focused. So I'd probably bring a Moongus to this game. I definitely like my own Ice Rider. I mean, it has strong offensive coverage into half this team right off the bat. And it can just click Glacial Lance. It doesn't really care about the opponent's speed control. I think we lead Calyrex for sure. I don't hate leading a Moongus here, but I also don't hate keeping it in the back. Roaring Moon is actually not that bad here for the possible knockoff into especially their Calyrex, but knockoff could be useful into a few of these Pokemon, but I'm not sure that's the best reason to bring more Roaring Moon to this one. Sure, we can do open team sheets. Calyrex Glacial Lance has coverage to half their team. I can look to cover the rest of it, which actually Roaring Moon does pretty nicely. So I'm talking myself into Roaring Moon here. I'll definitely bring Amoonguss in the back, and that leaves room for one of Landorus, Urshifu, and Ogerpon. And I feel like Ogerpon is the best bet, if only because their own Calyrex can be hard to deal with. Okay, so I want to just go straight for a knockoff into this Calyrex, but of course they could Rage Powder here, and in that case I'd rather land Acrobatics into Amoonguss. What's the Terra type on Amoonguss? It's Water. Well, I guess Glacial Lance and knockoff is fine, and if they Terrastallize, I'd rather land knockoff into Amoonguss than Acrobatics anyway, so we'll do knockoff for the Calyrex slot. They protect on that, okay. Glacial Lance is 90 to Amoonguss. But Calyrex is taking a nap now. That said, it's reasonably well positioned here to kill off a one-turn sleep at least, or something like that. I'll try again to knock off their Calyrex. They swap Amoonguss out to Urshifu. We land the knockoff with a crit. So that's good. They get Trick Room up. I probably don't want Roaring Moon to stick around right now. I'm just going to try Glacial Lance again, and for this turn I'm going to protect Roaring Moon. It would be very nice to wake up and knock out their Calyrex, because once again that is a hard Pokemon to switch in on. Please wake up. Oh, it does. Okay. Good luck for me in this game. Don't quite get the KO, but actually that's pretty dangerous because they're threatening a Blood Moon KO into Calyrex, aren't they? How do I deal with that? I'm not sure I see a good way. I think I'll just protect this turn and see if I can remove the Ursaluna, but they probably won't let me. Well, if I think they're going to Blood Moon, then I don't think they're going to Hyper Voice. So if Roaring Moon had taken that Glacial Lance, there'd be a chance, but it didn't happen. Okay, well, Amoonguss will be slower than any of these Pokemon. I can Spore their Calyrex. They don't have Terra Grass. Or it actually might be more valuable to Spore Ursaluna here. I could Pollen Puff Calyrex, actually. But do I prefer to Spore Ursaluna? I can Terrastallize Amoonguss, Spore Ursaluna, and Glacial Lance. I actually think I like that play most here. And the Terra is to be able to take a Glacial Lance from their Calyrex, but they don't give me the chance to try it. But we do get rid of the Ursaluna and get a boost on our Calyrex here. Amoonguss comes in next. That is tricky to deal with. I think I'm just going to go ahead and this turn and protect Calyrex and... Oh, they can redirect. The problem with Terrastallizing Amoonguss is now Rage Powder will work on it. I'll try to knock out their Calyrex with a Pollen Puff, but they'll probably stop this. Or they might stop it. I don't know if they... Yeah, they do. Okay. That would have been pretty cool to pull off on the last turn of Trick Room. Don't quite manage it. Amoonguss does take a Glacial Lance, though, and I believe my Calyrex will be the fastest Pokemon now. Glacial Lance back, and I'll just go for a... Whoops. I'll just go for a side Pollen Puff here. Keep Calyrex nice and healthy. Okay, good. If that hadn't KO'd, that would have been a problem, but +1 at pretty low HP on the opponent's side. Works out nicely. The pairing of Amoonguss and Ice Rider Calyrex is putting in a lot of work here. I'll Glacial Lance to try to finish off their Calyrex and just redirect the Urshifu's attack. Attacking Amoonguss here, but Calyrex is still healthy. Knocks out their Calyrex. Does more than half to their Urshifu. Gets to +3, and then I have Ogerpon in the back, and either one of my Pokemon can knock out this Urshifu from here. I also could have gone Follow Me and made sure to close it out with Glacial Lance, but doesn't matter. Ogerpon can pick up this last KO after waiting patiently in the back. So that was more like it, and the duo of Calyrex and Amoonguss put in a lot of work there, which is good to see. Now we have a Zamazenta team. This is an old school Zamazenta team with the Latios and Tyranitar. Well, maybe I shouldn't call anything in Generation 9 old school, but It feels like it's been a long generation. I guess this is my first full one playing VGC and getting used to it. But anyway, how do I beat Zamazenta? Well, Ogre Pawn is probably important. Ogre Pawn or Landorus or both. Landorus is tricky because it's really only definitely good into Zamazenta, and then like maybe Tyranitar depending on how I play it. Ogre Pawn looks very good here. I do have to watch out for the Latios. I don't hate the idea of leading Calyrex Roaring Moon again, except that it makes me vulnerable to Zamazenta lead. So maybe Calyrex Ogre, Ogre Pawn Roaring Moon lead is better with Calyrex in the back. And then Urshifu is kind of reasonable here. Amoonguss is kind of reasonable. Landorus is kind of reasonable. Gotta make a decision though. Amoonguss put in work last game. Let's see if it can do it again. Okay, so we're leading Ogre Pawn Roaring Moon, trying to get offensive pressure immediately. We see Tyranitar and Latios on the other side. I don't think I said, but one reason I wanted to lead Roaring Moon is that I don't have a lot of threats into the Latios. Calyrex is pretty much the only one, and then Latios kind of counters the rest of my team, which is the kind of thing that it's here to do on a team like this. So being able to threaten the knockoff into it immediately I think is nice here. That said, in this position, I might go for Tailwind first. I'll definitely try to Horn Leech this Tyranitar. It could Terrastalize, but forcing that out is not necessarily the worst thing. And I think I actually will just go for a knockoff into Latios and see what that does. Terra Steel. Alright, it Terrastalized Latios. That I didn't expect. But they missed the Rock Slide into the more important target, so that's good. Get some damage into Tyranitar. But I'm not in a position to get my Tailwind up here, so... Yeah, and the Rock Slide is such a threat, too. Let's kill a turn of their Tailwind. See what they do. Go right for a Draco Meteor into Roaring Moon. I mean, that's not the worst thing for me. Draco Meteor. There's nobody I want to switch in on that. If Calyrex or Amoonguss had already Terrastalized either one of them, they'd be immune to it, but they haven't. I'm going to try to remove this Tyranitar. Because if the Latios is going to weaken itself for me, I'm not that afraid of it then. I'll click Tailwind, but I think really I'm just trying to kill their Tailwind. I'm not getting mine up this game, yeah. But the special attack drop on the Latios means it's a little bit less threatening. Tyranitar is off the board now. No more Rock Slides flying around. And I can go Amoonguss here and have the redirection available while I try to keep hitting things hard with Ogre Pawn, because Ogre Pawn, its only real problem right now is that it's at low HP. It's otherwise pretty well positioned to put in a lot of work in front of this Terra Steel Latios. There's the Zamazenta. Kind of want to Spore Zamazenta. Let's just protect first and scout. Obviously they can't Terrastalize Zamazenta, but okay, couldn't have spored it that turn anyway. Latios going for a Luster Purge into Ogre Pawn. I'll try to Ivy Cudgel it here and Spore Zamazenta. They go for the Luster Purge into Amoonguss, but yeah, -2 special attack, not that dangerous. Unfortunately, Zamazenta does knock out Ogre Pawn. That is a bit of a waste for me. I can't even high horsepower the Latios because it has Levitate, so I actually was not sure how I was going to remove it here. I mean, Glacial Lance probably does the job with 1 or 2 hits when Latios is just that low on HP, but for some reason they forfeited as soon as their Zamazenta took a nap. I don't know why. I didn't feel like I liked my position that much here. Though I do have Trick Room available, and we have seen Calyrex and Amoonguss put in work together, I probably could just set Trick Room and Spore Latios this turn, and then it probably is tricky for them to break my last 2 Pokemon from there, but I definitely... I mean, it looks playable to me. I don't know why they forfeited there. But, yeah, the Ogre Pawn, I didn't do as much as I wanted with it, but I still thought my position was pretty reasonable at the end there. Okay, Dusk made Necrozma. That's cool. I did see that I think one of them, at least one, made day 2 in San Antonio. Or maybe I scrolled further down the team list than I thought, but I think there was one. After Birmingham was kind of dry in terms of new teams, there were a lot of interesting new teams in San Antonio, so It's kind of nice that there's a bit of a pause before the next event, and I can make a few videos about this one. We're starting with this team, of course, but there will be some interesting ones in the next couple weeks. Anyway, Hitmontop, Galarian Moltres, Rillaboom, Chi-Yu, Gastrodon. Weird team. So they have possible wide guard with the Hitmontop, plus they're restricted as a Steel type. That makes Calyrex's life harder, but it does like targeting... Well, it doesn't like targeting Galarian Moltres that much, actually. Galarian Moltres is a bit of an Ice Rider check as well. I do still think I bring Calyrex to this game. I once again like Ogerpon a fair bit here. I even could see myself leading Ogerpon Rillaboom... Or, I mean, Ogerpon Amoonguss this time. I think I'm down to try that with Calyrex in the back, and... Don't love Urshifu into this Gastrodon and Rillaboom. I do kind of like Landorus here. I think Landorus is pretty reasonable. It threatens Necrozma. It threatens Chi-Yu. I think that's what I'll bring in the back. So they're leading Moltres, Chi-Yu. Double Dark immediately. Not the best matchups for Ogerpon. I kind of want to not learn my lesson and just Terrastallize the Ogerpon right away and see what an Ivy Cudgel does to this Moltres. So I think that's what I'll do. But Amoonguss is then really awkwardly positioned. I'll just protect it this turn and see what we can make of this. Heat Wave from the Chi-Yu. Still chips Ogerpon a fair bit. It's Life Orb Chi-Yu, so at least it's wearing itself down too. Ivy Cudgel almost one-shots the Moltres, but not quite. So we're giving it Berserk with Beads of Ruin. And they set Tailwind. Oh no. They might just run away with this one. I'll try a Rage Powder, but I'm definitely worried about spread moves coming out here. There's one from Chi-Yu. If they click Fiery Wrath, I probably... Oh, doesn't matter. Amoonguss fainted anyway. Yeah. I'm just not... I think I might just not be able to overcome that turn 1 setup from this opponent. I think my only out is double protects, so... I'll try that. It's pretty unfortunate for me that Ivy Cudgel did 98%. But also, I just didn't see this lead coming. If I'd led Urshifu, instead of not even bringing it to this game, then I'd obviously be a lot stronger positioned here. But it is what it is. They got me. GG to this player. They can just get that Tailwind back up if they want. They don't even need to. Okay, well, that was a quick one. On to the next. Okay, I can just make out a Cleavor hiding behind that Eternatus. Then we got Comfey, Okidogi, Ditto, Whimsicott. So this is going to be a Cosmic Power Eternatus team, isn't it? Which makes me want to lead Roaring Moon and go for a knockoff into it. At least take away that kind of recovery. I could even... If I think this team is all in on setting up Eternatus, I could even lead Landorus Roaring Moon. Have pretty decent threats into it immediately. Maybe I need a Amoonguss for the Spore, but we'll see. And then I can lead, or I can bring Ogerpon and Urshifu are not that good into into Eternatus, unless it Terrastalizes. But then I'm thinking of like a Steel Terra, and Landorus already beats that. Maybe I shouldn't go all in on Landorus for that, but I kind of think I want Amoonguss and Calyrex in the back. We'll see if I end up regretting it, but that's been the best duo so far. They actually don't lead Eternatus at all. They lead Comfey, Okidogi. So I'm down to just Earth Power this Okidogi immediately, and I kind of want to set Tailwind. I am worried about the double super effective Priority Draining Kiss coming out into Roaring Moon, so I could Terrastalize Roaring Moon. Using my Terra early has not tended to pay off with this team. That said, I have Fairy Terra on the 2 Pokemon in the back, and my opponent's team seems to be largely built around 2 strong poison types, and I don't really see the Terra Water on Landorus doing a whole lot here either. In fact, keeping the ground type flying typing is probably more valuable, resisting Okidogi stabs and Landorus is poison. So I actually think that Terra Flying is pretty reasonable on Roaring Moon here. And all that, and they just protect Comfey. Okay. Sure. Well, I got the Tailwind, and I knocked out the Doggo, and they forfeited. Another quick one. Okay. Anyway. Okay, an Ice Rider. Why can't I speak these days? A Shadow Rider team with Iron Bundle. Indeedy. Sinor. Iron Hands. Whimsicott. So Trick Room stuff could be nice here. They've agreed to open team sheets. Okay. Trick Room stuff could be nice here. It's fighting Terrablast, Life Orb, Shadow Rider. Trick Room stuff could be nice here. I keep saying that. It doesn't seem to get less true. I could lead like Calyrex, Roaring Moon. If they lead Shadow Rider, I'm threatening the knockoff. Maybe I can force their Terra out. At the very least, I can take some pressure off of my Calyrex and go for that Trick Room. They don't have Taunt on the Whimsicott. They do have Encore. I'll bring Amoonguss and I think Landorus for this one. Has decent offensive coverage into a lot of their stuff, and even, you know, special attacking fairly strong into the bundle. They have Imprison Trick Room on Indeedee. Okay, I didn't check that. But again, forcing out their Terror now is not necessarily the worst thing. I'm disincentivizing them to just click Astral Barrage by leading Roaring Moon. I think I'm down to just Glacial Lance and knock off the Calyrex slot. They can follow me if they want, but they can't do that and Imprison, so yeah. They also can Terrasilize Calyrex, but that's at least a Terra they can't use later in the game. Ah, we just knock it out. Okay. There's the... They did go for the Imprison, but then we crit Indeedee with the Glacial Lance. But losing Calyrex turn 1 like that is already so bad for this opponent. They're definitely... Okay, this is a little bit interesting, because I get Fake Out on the board and also Encore. I'm just going to Glacial Lance and... Hey, I'll try to Acrobatics this Whimsicott. If they Encore me into knockoff, it's not the end of the world. But they just forfeit. Okay. I didn't really understand why Roaring Moon has been rising in the meta lately. But... Yeah, it's definitely proving its worth in some of these matchups. I'm still not entirely sure why it's seeing play over the likes of Whimsicott and Tornadus. Sometimes I really notice the difference between priority Tailwind and just really fast Tailwind, but knockoff is a very good move, so that's a good start for explaining it. And then having Acrobatics to cover the fighting types that are very strong in this format, as well as maybe grass types for some kinds of teams like the Kyogre teams. All right, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of coming to see the vision as we play it out. Or as we get more games with it. Anyway, here's the 6 that won Worlds, and also Birmingham. Could be either version, could be a different one. Obviously, Landorus is strong into Miraidon, so is Ice Rider in Trick Room, if I can execute that. I actually might like just leading Calyrex Amoonguss here, because I can Rage Powder. The Miraidon is probably choiced. It might be a little bit vulnerable to Encore Whimsicott, but it really depends on, especially the damage into Amoonguss early on. But I'll give it a try, and I'll bring Landorus for sure to help cover Miraidon, Iron Hands, Ogerpon to an extent. And it might be time to finally bring Urshifu to a game. Gives me priority. Gives me Unseen Fist. But I actually think I might prefer Roaring Moon, even in this one. Roaring Moon would be very hard to position in Trick Room, but if I can get it right, it has strong coverage into a lot of this team. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so they're leading Urshifu Miraidon. They want big damage immediately, but they might find that hard to get into Amoonguss. Either way, I should be able to get this Trick Room pretty safely, as I click Rage Powder here with Amoonguss. I'm not even worried about Whimsicott right now because it's not on the field, though I suppose they could Volt Switch out or U-turn or Hard Switch and get it in now, and then I have a bit of a problem on my hands. But these are not the greatest offensive threats into my Amoonguss. They could just Draco Meteor it immediately, and maybe even that's what the Terra Fairy is for, but they Volt Switch. Who's coming in? It's Iron Hands, okay. The Surging Strikes, that's not going to KO. Of course, I can't Spore after this because Electric Terrain is still on the field, even though I can't see it. Well, I can see this text here, but not the background, which enough to mess me up sometimes. I do need to keep that in mind. That said, Protect is not that appealing here because they have Fake Out Pressure. I can't Spore. I probably want to switch Amoonguss out, maybe to Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon definitely feels like my most expendable Pokemon now that I've gotten the Trick Room set up. I guess it's kind of a wash if they fake out or not. So, and yeah, I'll get some recovery on Amoonguss. If Roaring Moon goes down here, that's not too terrible. They actually fake out that slot, maybe trying to snipe the KO on Amoonguss. That did a lot of damage with the crit there. Get the Glacial Lance, but that Urshifu is doing damage to Calyrex more quickly than I'd like. I guess the answer to that is get Amoonguss back in. I could even protect Calyrex this turn to stop the Iron Hands attack. And then we can take a Surging Strikes, and I can get Side Pollen Puff on the board after that. Actually protect Urshifu. Rain Punch Amoonguss. There goes that recovery that I got on it. I might be better off. I could click Rage Powder. I could High Horsepower something. I don't know what the best play is here. Let's High Horsepower Iron Hands. And I think let's Rage Powder. And do our, try to minimize the Drain Punch recovery that it gets. Maybe I was better off targeting Urshifu this turn. Yeah, because that doesn't KO Iron Hands. They knock out Amoonguss now. That I'm not confident I played that one right. But I can get Landorus in here. And I think I'm down to Glacial Lance and Earth Power Urshifu. Ah, okay, there's the Terra Bug Iron Hands from, I think, Birmingham. But they don't take any KOs this turn. I do just miss the KO on the Iron Hands, but Trick Room will end here. So Iron Hands will now be moving last. There's Miraidon again. Let's protect Calyrex and see if they let me just have this Earth Power into... I could even Sandsear Storm. But that's high variance that I don't think I really need. The bigger worry is that they just Draco Meteor Landorus, but even then they could miss. Oh, they also could Terra Fairy. No, they can't Terra Fairy because they've already used their Terra. But they do Dazzling Gleam, but without the Terra Fairy it doesn't KO. We get rid of Miraidon. Iron Hands attacks into a Protect. It's Ogerpon in the back. I guess Roaring Moon is my out for that, so I guess in this position I double target the Iron Hands, make sure that I knock that out before I lose both of these Pokemon. And then I get Roaring Moon in, and I can just click Acrobatics, I think. I probably don't need the Terra Flying. I'm probably better off resisting Ogerpon's attacks. And they Spiky Shield this turn. Probably should have covered for that. Roaring Moon gets a little bit lower. That said, if they attack Roaring Moon, then Landorus is free to land this Sludge Bomb. And Roaring Moon just gets the KO with Acrobatics anyway. Faster than Ogerpon. Higher base speed than Ogerpon. I honestly didn't remember that, so the Terra Flying would have been fine, but hey, live and learn. And we do live through one more game. We'll get another one here. It's Kyogre team. Torn Ogre. King Gambit. Baxcalibur. Pokemon I don't see too often right now. How do I beat Torn Ogre? This Calyrex, of course, is Terra Fairy, so I can't make it resist water. I do have a Amoonguss. I have Terra Water Landorus. And like Sludge Bomb a Grass Kyogre. Could probably do stuff with Ogerpon and Urshifu in this matchup. But I can't bring every Pokemon, of course. I think I like Roaring Moon and Landorus with Calyrex and Amoonguss, but maybe that's silly and I'll be punished for it. We'll see. I didn't really think that all the way through. Okay, they're leading Rillaboom, Baxcalibur. Not great. Landorus is under a ton of pressure no matter how you look at this. Cover for Fake Out on this turn and see what they do. It's Terra Steel Rillaboom immediately. Okay. Alright. Swords Dance back to... Oh no, okay. Guess I should have just attacked. Excalibur... It's going to be slower than Roaring Moon, but not necessarily Landorus. Do I just hit it as hard as I can? Like so? Yeah, alright, let's just see what we can do here. We lose Landorus to an Ice Shard. Don't KO Excalibur, and now I've made Roaring Moon weak to Ice Shard. But I guess I get Amoonguss in here, and that can Rage Powder and sack itself to get rid of this +2 Excalibur. Or is Amoonguss more valuable than Roaring Moon? It might be. I'm gonna Rage Powder. Okay, Amoonguss survives. I said Tailwind, no Bleak Wind Storm yet. Excalibur is gone, but it took a lot of resource investment to get rid of it. I definitely feel behind here. They have Tailwind up too. I'd like to switch Amoonguss out and get Regenerator, but I don't want Calyrex just getting blasted by a Water Spout. But if they do that, then maybe I can Spore them. So let's try it. Bleak Wind, okay. Alright. No Spore. Calyrex gets blasted by a Water Spout. Yeah. I mean, I'll try, but no. Okay, the spread damage is too much. I just, like I said, put a lot of resources into getting rid of that Excalibur, and then I didn't have enough left for the Kyogre in the back, so fair enough. I think in general, my trouble with this team, I'm fairly low on the ladder right now. I was higher for a little bit, and then I've been bulk recording some stuff with some dubious teams at times. By now I probably have a bunch of shorts going up. It's a thing that I'm experimenting with. Probably won't last. Well, we'll see. It's a thing that I'm experimenting with. And yeah, my rating has been swinging up and down recording those. But down here, at least in this part of the ladder, what I want to say is the pattern I've seen is that trying to use this, I've been punished a couple of times by players that just really aggressively set up turn one. Which I guess comes in part from this team not having something like fake out pressure or even intimidate anywhere. So I guess it is exploitable by those kinds of teams in that way, but also there may be some player diff, right? I could be attacking more aggressively. I could be sporing more aggressively. There are potentially ways to shut this down, at least if I anticipate that they're coming, and I'm not anticipating that it often enough, and I'm not playing in a way that avoids being punished by it. So there are a lot of possible reasons this could be. Maybe I'll reflect on that at some point if I'm trying to get better at Regulation G. I don't think I have any events that I'm going to in this format, so I don't know how seriously I'm taking it. It is a format that I've struggled with in its first run most of the way, and I'm having some trouble with it again now. There are just so many powerful teams, and so much comes down to matchups. But the best players overcome that, right? And that's what Justin Tang and Shiliang Tang both did in San Antonio with this very strong team right here. I think we do see a lot of the core of what makes it so good. The Calyrex and Amoonguss duo has been a lot of fun to use today. I don't necessarily understand every team building choice. There are some that made themselves clearer to me as this video went on and some that didn't. But it's a great team, built by some great players that had a really incredible run, reaching both sides of the final in San Antonio. And by all means, try it out. You can try it out yourself. Shiliang Tang has posted the full paste on Twitter, and I think it's a very valuable team for getting some practice at this format. And like I said, there will be a couple other videos with some other teams that caught my attention in San Antonio, not because they won the whole thing, but because they made some really interesting building choices that I'm looking forward to exploring. So keep an eye out for those in the next couple weeks.